Thanks for speaking to us, Rick. Your new show, Yet Another Evening with Rick Wakeman. You're going to be playing Bradford on Saturday, and you're coming up to Scotland to see us in April. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, it's a sort of a one-man show that's sort of built up over the years. I don't do it that often. In fact, I only did a couple last year. Every now and then, I sort of get the urge to go out and do it because it's just great fun. And it's sort of built up. It's a mixture of music, some of mine, some of other people's that I've worked with over the years, and plus a load of ludicrous, silly stories that come from either the books that I've done or from silly things that I've happened to me. There's a lot of people come along expecting me to be grumpy, and I am. So it works really well.
Do you find you've got more grumpy fans or more musical fans?
If I could have £1 for every woman who's come to me and said, my husband's a grumpy old man just like you, I would be a very rich man.
You're quite fond of Scotland, aren't you, Rick? You used to live near...
My daughter was born in Edinburgh. Yeah, she's exactly. Well, it's no longer there now, of course, but it's Simpsons. She was the old Simpsons Hospital. She was born in 1982, and she is fiercely proud of being Scottish. It's even though she's lived there. I mean, we take her up there. Well, I take her up there every now and then. She's sort of 33 this year.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of connections up in Scotland. Lots of friends, lots of connections, and to be brutally honest with you, any excuse to get up there is great.
Exactly. Is it right you used to live near Aberlady?
Yeah, I did. When Gemma was born, my wife at the time, I'm a serial marrier, so that you have to understand that it's a particular wife at the time. We were in Scotland. I was doing some stuff at Radio 4.
Yeah.
And she was taken ill and taken into hospital where she stayed for a few months. And Richard Fidley, who was the boss of Radio 4 and Clyde and all that kind of he had a wonderful house out at Aberlady House. And he said, look, I've got a sort of an annex. Do you want to stay in it?
And you said yes.
I said, thank you very much. So I had the most wonderful time. Because I was out there, a little dog, and I used to walk the dog, and I stayed in this annex all over Christmas and the New Year, and I just made so many friends. It was just fantastic. And it's a place I often go back nostalgically and visit, because the old Aberlady Inn, it was in my drinking days. I'm sadly not allowed to imbibe anymore, but I certainly increased the coffers at the Aberlady Inn, that's for sure.
It's good to hear.
After I visited the wife and baby Gemma in hospital after they were born and things, I would come back to the Aberlady Inn, park the car up at Richard Finley's house, walk round to the Aberlady Inn, and I think the word stagger was what I was looking for. No, I had a wonderful time. As I say, met so many friends. It was brilliant.
Is that where you got into golf as well?
No, I didn't get into golf till a bit later. It was 84 I started playing golf. Mm-hmm. Early 1984, and I became incredibly fanatical. I'm a bit more of a fair weather guy. I mean, I used to, when I was younger, back in the 80s and 90s, sleet, snow, rain, hail, wind, hurricane, I'd be out there.
Wow.
I'm not a rain person anymore. If it's raining, I ain't playing. But there was some fantastic charity tournaments up in Scotland, and any excuse to get up. My favourite course, which is probably going to upset some other courses as well, was Turnberry. I just loved Turnberry.
Yeah.
I've played it about a dozen times, and just fantastic place.
You played Edinburgh Festival in 2013.
Yeah.
I remember a big hype about that, and I'm also told that you played a sold-out Odeon in 1980.
That's right. I did. Crikey, you're dead right. That was an interesting thing because in 1980 we suddenly got a call from a promoter up or whatever, and they had the Odeon in their book for the festival for this period, and for whatever reason, whoever was going to do it, I think it was some American, decided they weren't coming in, and so he had this night free, and he said, would you come up and do it? And we said, yeah, absolutely, because my bass player at the time was Scottish David Payton, who used to have the band Pilot.
All right.
And he was up. So I thought, well, that's great. We could do it as like a 3 hour or whatever. And I put another couple of guys together because the band wasn't really running at the time. David
Yeah.
was already up there. So we shot up and did it. And I spent a day on the road and I thought, hey, I like this. This is really nice. For the festival. I'd never really been to the festival before. And so that was good fun. And then what happened was quite interesting. About, crikey, 5-6 years ago, maybe more, even 6-7 years ago, the first of the Grumpy book, the Grumpy Old Rock Star came out.
Right.
And my publisher said, look, do you want to go out to the Edinburgh Festival to do the book there? And I said, that sounds great. So I went up. I had about 2 or 3 wonderful days after doing that. And then the Edinburgh Festival was always something that I wanted to do, or to do the fridge. But I never managed to block off a period of time or anything to do it.
Yeah.
And then an agent came to me and said, look, would you like to do 12, or they wanted me to do 3 weeks. And I said, and they looked at when the time was, and I said, I can't do 3 weeks, so I'm going to go to South America at the end of it. So I could do a couple of weeks. That's possible. I could do like sort of 12 days you can fit it in. So they said, okay. So I came up and I had a fantastic time because you keep meeting loads of friends that you don't normally see.
Yeah.
It was brilliant, so I thoroughly enjoyed it. I did 12 shows there, and it was really sad when it came over, and I wished I could have been up longer. I think the Edinburgh Festival, it doesn't matter what status you are as an artist or a musician, whether you're in the Premier League or whether you're in the Scottish Division 3, it doesn't matter. You have to do it. It's an absolute must. The Edinburgh Festival is definitely something in your life you have to pick up.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you why I know about the Odeon gig in 1980. I was talking to my uncle, and he told me he managed to bootleg that gig by hiding a tape recorder in a flower on stage.
Oh, fantastic! That's brilliant.
Should I invoice him for you?
That's wonderful. I'd love a copy if you still got one.
Oh, I'm sure we can sort that out. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
Rick, famously, you were asked to join Yes and to join Spiders from Mars on the same day.
Yeah.
What do you think would have happened if you'd gone with the Bowie outfit, Spiders from Mars?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, one of the things for sure, I mean, years later in the 70s, David and I were neighbours out in Switzerland where we lived, and we did talk about it. The truth of the matter is, I think the decision, if Yes had to have asked me to join on the Saturday, then I definitely would have gone with David, because I absolutely love working with David. I mean, the man's a genius, great to work with, fantastic music, fantastic songs. But I always would have known that it would have been short term.
Yeah.
Because David always liked to put new batches of musicians together for each project and things.
Yeah.
So I knew that had happened. It would have been 2 years, maybe at most, maybe 3.
Yeah.
And also, there is a limitation that it would have been, obviously, David's music, because it's David Bowie show, in every respect. So even though there would have been a lot of freedom of what we played and how we played it for myself and Mick Ronson, it would have been still very much, there would have been a limit to how much we could do. So, no doubt about it, if Yes hadn't have asked at the time, I 100% would have gone with David, but I would have been aware that it would have been a short term, that in a couple of years I'd have been looking for, and needed to look for something else to do.
Rick, what do you think is more important, talent or showmanship?
Oh, crikey.
Because you're famous for both.
You need it. I think, the truth be known, you sort of need them both, because I think ideally you need a bit of both. It's a good question. I mean, I think you have to balance out depending on the degree of talent that somebody has. And I mean, some people it's far more showmanship than it is talent. You have situations like David Bowie, for example, who has just an amazing amount of both. So that's why he's still the great. So
out of all these guys, there's a long list. I'm sure you get asked this a lot. David Bowie, Cat Stevens, The Kinks, Lou Reed. Which one seemed to be the craziest for you back in the time?
Oh, the craziest, Lou Reed was nuts. He was absolutely nuts. I did my whole piano sessions for him in a studio with all the lights turned off.
Really?
In the pitch black, yeah. Everything in the pitch black. basically his instructions to me were, "I'll play you the track, play as fast as you can. Thank you." And that was a bizarre one. And there was a very, silly one, funny one. I did the follow up to Clive Dunn's Grandad, which was called "Grandma, I Love You."
Oh,
Wow. And it was a session in London, quite a big orchestra and things. Dreadful song. And I played away practically £9. And Clive Dunn was there, and he came up to me. This was 1970 or something, or whatever.
Yeah. And
he came up to me after that, and he said, what do you think of the song? And I obviously paused too much, and I went, and he went, "It's crap, isn't it?" And I said, Mr. Dunn, to be honest with you, you've had such a big hit with Grandad. When you have a novelty song, it's very, very hard to have success with a second novelty song following up.
Oh, I agree.
But you have to do it. And he went, "Yeah, I suppose so." And off he went. And it was very funny. I didn't meet him for years and years later. I mean, this was 1970, which we're talking about 2003, 2000.
That's 30 years.
2004. There was a big dinner, a luncheon dinner for David Croft and Jimmy Perry, who wrote Ed Derby and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
And I was there, and Clive Dunn came over to me. He was there. Now, remember, I haven't seen him for 30 plus years. And he walked over to me, and he said, "Hello, Rick." And I said, "Hello, Clive, how are you?" He said, "Fine, thank you." He said, "You played on my record, didn't you? To follow up to Grandad." And I said, "Yeah, I did, Clive." He said, "Crap, wasn't it?" It was brilliant.
Rick, you've been acquainted with so many famous people, but none perhaps more famous than Fidel Castro. What did you play him? He asked you to play a song.
No, he invited me. It's a long story, but basically, I was involved with a Swiss group of people who helped fund and run a children's cancer hospice in Cuba. And I all quietly done very wonderful guys in Switzerland who did it all. And I was involved. And I have been trying to get to play in Cuba for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Fascinated me. I love the music and all the things down there. And there's so little you can find out about it. And I wanted to go. You can't get down there. It was impossible at the time.
Yeah.
And then, cut a long story short, my friend in Lugano in Switzerland, who runs the charity, he asked me to go and see him one day in Lugano, so I flew over to see him. And he said, "You always wanted to go to Cuba and play." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You can go." And I said, "Look, for me to go and play in Cuba, it's impossible. You can't get the paper, you can't get down there, you can't get the equipment there. And also, you actually need permission probably from Fidel Castro himself." He said, "You've got it." And he said he knows about what you're doing, and you are invited down.
Goodness me.
So I went down there was no money, obviously, because they hadn't had money at the time. But what I did, because it was very expensive to get all the equipment and everything down there in the band, I put some shows in Mexico and Costa Rica, which covered my costs. We went on from Cuba into Costa Rica. And it was absolutely fantastic. And it sort of reiterated my beliefs that I don't believe anything I read or hear unless I see it for myself.
Yeah.
And I met Fidel Castro, spent quite a long time with him and his foundation of people, and I really got to understand the man. I got to understand the country and why it is, and I came away with quite generally the utmost admiration for him. And my impression was that he was an absolute humanitarian. He really did care, but and to some extent, over the years, through various things, he'd been handcuffed by other countries who just didn't want him there.
Yeah.
And his bravery in standing up for what he did and trying his very best, which was just, I thought, was phenomenal. And it was interesting. When I came back, there was quite a few people and friends of mine, and they would say, "Oh, yeah, but it's nasty." And things. Well, I actually had some journalists say, "Oh, it's really nasty and it's horrible." I said, "Have you been?" They went, "Well, no." And I said, "So have you spoken to people and seen what they..." "Well, no, but I've read about it." I said, if you want to believe everything you read, then, especially when it's situations, you're making a huge mistake.
Well, talking about believing everything you read, I read yesterday, you can tell me if this is true or not, that your dad was involved in the Ted Heath Orchestra.
Yeah, he was in the yeah, very, very vague. He was...
I'm fascinated by the guy. So when I read that...
years, my father was in the army, but occasionally he would get called up because he was a good piano player to what they called when there was bands and things going on playing, in somewhere out in for the troops and or whatever. And my dad did get called up on a couple of occasions and he played piano. He did a couple of things with the Ted Heath Orchestra. I mean, He was never officially in the band. It was just army time. They pulled in musicians from wherever they could, and he did play a couple of things with Ted Heath and also for Harry Seacombe and also Billy Cotton.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he was a good what we call a stride piano player in the style of Charlie Coon, the famous Charlie Coon. Mm-hmm. And my dad said he loved it. It was great fun. He was in and out, and then they sort of took him back wherever he was to be shot at. But he was very honest like that. He was a good player.
Yeah.
He wasn't a sensational player, but he said, at the time, needs must for those orchestras, those sort of people. So he said he probably, if the truth were known, wouldn't have got the job in peacetime, but he was good enough for wartime.
Oh, fantastic. Rick, when you look at many of your solo records, they all revolve around history, the myths and legend of King Arthur, the 6 wives of Henry VIII. If you were to have lived and composed in any era but your own, which would it be?
The Baroque era.
Baroque era.
The Baroque era, the likes of Vivaldi and because that was the real start of the rock and roll showman. I mean, Vivaldi was he was your Jimi Hendrix of the guitar. Women would faint. I mean, he'd dress up. He was a priest, so he'd be dressed up. He had an all-girls orchestra. I mean, he was a rock and roller. And it was a great era of experimentation.
Yeah.
Instrument makers were making new instruments all the time for all the new composers and players. There's a huge parallel between that Baroque era and so you could say the 70s and 60s and 70s in the UK.
Is that what you're doing a show on Vivaldi at the moment? Is that?
Yeah, we're doing some funny enough. We are. And one of the reasons I've got the nice job of hosting it goes out in April, is because they knew of my great love for that era and the huge connection it's got with today.
Based on your music alone, which one of Henry VIII's 6 wives do you fancy the most?
Oh, Catherine Howard. She was only a teenager. Nobody really knows for sure, but she was very young, in a late teenager when they sort of, he chopped her head off, really. But, yes, I think she was shall we say, the playful, fun one.
Yeah.
And, I mean, even though I'm 65 now, you can't be a playful, fun one, can you, really? She liked to enjoy life. She was a bit of a naughty girl, but she liked to enjoy life and have a lot of fun. And you can see why Henry fancied her. But it was one of those situations that Henry could play the field, but when she did, it wasn't allowed.
Rick, my favourite record of yours is the 77 Criminal record. Is that you proving that you would be an excellent concert pianist?
Crikey. I don't know, it was what I was trying to do. I mean, when I was at the Royal College of Music, finish off things, so that's basically what I was. I mean, I have done quite a lot of piano concerts with orchestras. In fact, I'm doing one next Wednesday at the Queen Elizabeth Hall with the Orion Symphony Orchestra. That's just piano and orchestra. No, I never try. To be honest with you, I'm going to try to do anything to prove a point or to do anything. I just do things because I like doing them. I've never done anything musically that I've gone, I don't like this.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't do it. Because my late father used to say to me, if you don't enjoy what you're doing yourself, how the hell can you expect anybody else to?
Yeah.
So, which is why probably I've avoided country and western. So there you go.
Ooh, low blow to the Johnny Cashes of the world.
Yeah, I mean, as the old jokes go, in order to be reasonably happy, you have to sort of play the early country and western stuff backwards so the dog comes back to life, he gets his truck and house back. It's that kind of lot. He gets his wife back. So you play the music backwards. Famously,
David Bowie told you you've got to be your own man. I know your son Adam. He plays with Ozzy Osbourne, Sabbath.
He does.
What advice have you given him?
Exactly the same.
Exactly the same. Did you just say listen to Bowie?
I just said, look, you've got to be yourself. Don't. Of course, whether you like it or not, you're always influenced by bits and pieces here and there. But you never know really quite what. I said you've got to be your own man and find your own style and your own music, which Adam has done. So has Oliver, my oldest boy. Well, he did a couple of years with Yes as well. So I look at that, and they have. I've never openly influenced them in any way. I've never ever said, "Oh, you should try this or play this or do that."
Yeah.
I've just left them to it, and Adam in particular. And I think that both succeeding. Certainly Adam's succeeding, because it's really nice sometimes when I meet some young players. They say, "Oh, you're Adam's father."
Yeah.
I go, "Yeah," rather than saying, "Oh, Adam's your son."
Yeah, that's nice.
So he's a good lad. I don't. Anyway, I think if I did ever try and tell them what to do, they'd tell me to go away, slightly not as politely as that.
So who was cooler back in the day, you or Adam?
Oh, if I'm honest, I would think Adam.
Honesty's the best policy.
I think he's I don't know whether I was probably. He was probably. Well, let's just say, I'd like to think that some jokes you go in and out of coolness. Sometimes you go in the 80s. I was about as cool as an inferno. But then you go through periods where suddenly, to students or whatever, it's cool again.
Yeah.
And so it just. I suppose you clothe yourself according to how cool you are at the time.
One last question then, Rick, before I let you go, is I was told that you once said prog rock are like Brussels sprouts. You either love them or you hate them. Do you stand by that?
Yeah, I think I would actually sort of change that fractionally now, because prog rock has gone in so many different directions. From bands like Mars Volta, even Radiohead are relatively proggy in places, and there's so many different kinds now of music that's got a little bit of prog rock in it, that I think, the outright prog rock definitely it's Brussels sprouts. You love them or hate them. But in general, I would think it's more curry, in as much as some people like hot stuff, everything, the whole kitchen sink. And other people say, I wouldn't eat every day, but I'll have the odd korma.
So prog rock is curry.
Prog rock is curry now. Prog rock is curry now. Yeah.
Rick, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much, Stefan.
And we'll see you in Edinburgh sometime soon.
Yeah, make sure you come and say hello. It'd be nice to meet you. Brilliant.
Will do. Cheers. Thank you now.
Cheers, mate.
Bye. Thank you now.
Cheers, mate.
Bye. Thank you now.
Cheers, mate.
Bye. Thank you.